Welcome to another tremendous installment from very high above all the puerile and insipid forms of Wyoming mainstream media. This is Cowboy State Politics. I, of course, am your illustrious host, David Iverson, firmly ensconced behind the silver Cowboy State Politics microphone and broadcasting to you from the base of the Bighorns at the Cowboy State Politics studio in Sheridan, Wyoming. Good morning, my friends, and welcome to the program. Happy Saturday weekend update on Memorial Day weekend. I have to tell you, my friends, it does not even feel like it's Memorial Day weekend. This year is flying by, and it's probably because we have an election going on. And there are a ton of wannabe politicians running around. And there's a passel of former politicians that want to be politicians again, some more credible than others. Take R.J. Cost, for example. He served one term in the Senate representing Park and Bighorn counties. He was elected in 2018 and then unelected in 2022. Maybe one of the reasons he was unelected so quickly is he was not exactly as Republican as he let on. According to Evidence-Based Wyoming, during the 2022 budget session, R.J. Cost ranked dead last in the Wyoming Senate. He voted with the Democrats more often than the Democrats voted with the Democrats. Now, that, my friends, is pretty hard to pull off, but it is absolutely true. Senator Mike Giroux, the Democrat from Teton County, voted with the Republican majority around 18% of the time. R.J. Cost, a whopping 7. 7. Not 17, not 70, 7. Anyway, when the voters in Park and Bighorn counties got wind of his performance down in Cheyenne, they quickly dispatched him and replaced him with Dan Larson. After Senator Larson decided that one term in the Wyoming Senate was enough for him, R.J. Cost quickly filed and decided to try it again. It's not really going to work, I don't think. Park and Bighorn counties haven't forgotten how R.J. Cost teamed up with Nate Martin of Better Wyoming and former Democrat Governor Mike Sullivan to try to figure out how to elect more Democrats to the state of Wyoming. And recently, R.J. Cost ran an ad in the newspaper asking Democrats to cross over and register as Republicans so that they could vote for him in the upcoming primary. You know what they say. Once a redcoat, always a redcoat. Like Chi-Com Som, Albert Sommers. Senator Laura Pearson gave him a much-needed rest from politics, and now he's back at it to try to regain his old seat in the Wyoming House of Representatives. Too bad for him, though. House District 20 has been represented by Mike Schmid for the last 2 years, and they are keenly aware of the redcoat representation that Sommers provided to Lincoln and Sublette counties for several years. It is a very different political atmosphere in those two counties than it was when Sommers was still pulling the wool over voters' eyes. My guess is old Chi-Com Som is going to have a little bit more trouble than he thought. Officially, I don't exactly know who he'll be running against, but I've heard rumors that it's a young conservative that really doesn't like all the liberal redcoat politics that Albert Sommers represents. The truth is, my friends, this is not exactly the election to run in if you are one of the longtime insiders in the Wyoming legislature. It's probably not going to turn out too good for you. And especially so if it's pretty easy to tie you to the Chinese Communist Party. And, Albert, it is. So anyway, in the upcoming election, there are lots of these redcoats to keep our eyes on. And what they're all running on is pretty stupid, too. Freedom Caucus bad. Things were way better when I was in office. Re-elect me. Except that none of them can point to a single thing that the Freedom Caucus has done that is against the Republican Party platform. Nor can they really explain why any of the actions that the Freedom Caucus took are bad. And as far as the whole part about things were so fantastic when they were in office, I think Wyoming voters are pretty wise to their crony capitalism, to everything they did during the COVID special session, which was nothing to prevent the government from forcing you to jab a piece of metal into your arm. Don't forget about that. Oh, and as far as that little detail goes, don't forget that it was Eric Barlow who was the Speaker of the Wyoming House during the COVID special session. He was the guy in charge when the Wyoming legislature flushed all of our rights that are clearly laid out in Article 1, Section 38 of the Wyoming Constitution, he pushed the lever and sent them down the toilet. Good times, good times. And come to think of it, I don't think that he's addressed that whole episode in Wyoming's history. Somebody ought to ask him about it. Right after they ask him about Earth Justice, the same group that has sued the Trump administration numerous times. I'm sure he would probably say something along the lines of, that was so long ago and I've changed. Yeah, like your voting record the last 15 years where you vote 80% of the time with the Democrats. Nope, there's nothing that changes about that guy. And he's just one among many. All told, this is going to be a really fun election, simply because there are so many different people that are running for office that do have a record. Often you get people that sign up to run, and the only thing we have to go on is what they say. Not this time around. There's a lot of people for a variety of different races that do have a record. Now, it may not be in the legislature. Maybe they have a record of voting on a special district board, or in a couple of cases, they were the mayor of their little town, like Pete Boyer, who's running for House District 58. Truth is, I don't know a whole heck of a lot about that guy, but I'm looking forward to having him on the program and just getting his take on all of these different issues. But it's going to be fun, and I'm really looking forward to it. Moving on. On the live program this past week, I have interviewed a lot of different people, and a couple of those are running for the House of Representatives. That is the U.S. House of Representatives. On Wednesday's edition of the program, I played for you the interview I did with Frank Chapman, the ranch owner from Teton County. The very next day, I spoke with Jillian Balow, the former two-time Superintendent of Public Instruction. This time around, she's running for the U.S. House of Representatives. We had a great discussion, and we covered a lot of different ground. In just a second, I'm going to play that interview for you. But first, an absolutely outrageous exposition of pure capitalism. Today's program is brought to you by Morton Buildings. If you're in the market for any type of metal building, you should call my friends Marcos and Jesse at Morton Buildings. Their phone number is 307-674-2532, or you can check them out at their website, mortonbuildings.com. Have you figured out that the place you just moved to is almost exactly like the place you left, except with cowboy hats? Yeah, that's a common mistake. You see, not all places in Wyoming are actually Wyoming. Some of them, believe it or not, are deep blue Democrat strongholds. Now, if you want to get the heck out of there and actually move to a conservative place, call my friend Rebecca Bextel. Her phone number is 307-699-3519. She'll sell your house faster than a Democrat will raise your taxes and find you something a heck of a lot better that's actually in Wyoming. So give her a call. One more time, her phone number is 307-699-3519. The following ad was paid for by Brent Bean for governor.
Wyoming is not for sale. Brent Bean is a proven conservative who believes leadership starts with listening to the people. He'll return energy production, support our ranchers, put education back in the hands of parents, and make government accountable to you.
I aim to change that paradigm by putting people first and restoring principled conservative leadership and accountability to Wyoming.
It's time to return Wyoming to the people.
It's Memorial Day weekend, and if you'd like to meet Brent, he'll be in Cody at the Veterans Memorial tomorrow, May 24th. And now, back to the program. The people I interviewed this week during the live program is Jillian Balow, the twice-elected former Wyoming State Superintendent of Public Instruction. Here's that interview. I'd like to welcome candidate for the United States House of Representatives, Ms. Jillian Balow. Jillian, welcome back to the show.
Good morning, David. It's been a bit.
It has been a very long time. How you been?
I've been doing really well, thank you. Out on the road almost every day, or today I happen to be home and have already had a couple of coffees with folks in town.
All right, so where is home now? Cheyenne, Casper, Laramie?
Yep, my family and I moved to Cheyenne about a little over 2 years ago.
Okay.
So we are in Cheyenne.
All right, great. All right, so it has been a super long time, so why don't you take a couple of minutes and tell my audience about yourself?
Yeah. Well, David, thanks again for having me on. My name is Jillian Balow, and I am a candidate for U.S. Congress. You may remember my name. I served as Wyoming's twice-elected state superintendent. I'm born, raised, educated, raised my family, and thrived in Wyoming for 53 years. I taught school in Hewlett, raised my family largely in Thermopolis and Cheyenne, and again, I grew up in Gillette. So I'm a fifth-generation Wyomingite, started as a teacher, always have been interested in policy and Republican politics. Never thought I'd put my name on the ballot, but did for the first time to become Wyoming State Superintendent, and now I'm going in for a third time to become Wyoming's U.S. Congresswoman.
Okay, I've got lots of questions. The first one is we hear candidates say all the time, I'm a fourth-generation Wyomingite, I'm a 27th-generation Wyomingite. What does that mean?
Yeah, I think this is super important in this race. I know, I'll speak from a voter's viewpoint. We're at a precipice in Wyoming where there are so many opportunities and challenges across our state with everything from healthcare to energy prices to business opportunities, business and industry opportunities. And to put someone in Washington, D.C. without that generational or at least the Wyoming roots of having grown up in Wyoming and thrived here, it's hard to understand all of the Wyoming communities and how different decisions made at the state and national level hit differently in Hewlett than they do in Thermopolis, than they do in Casper. And so as a voter, I want to make sure that right now we are putting someone into this office of lone congresswoman to be able to just really represent all people across Wyoming, no matter what size community they live in, because they understand all of Wyoming.
Well, using that logic, and I don't mean to harp on this one, but using that logic, we ought to elect Joe Barbuto. He's been here for several generations, and
he has. Certainly, that's not the only thing that matters. Joe Barbuto does not share our politics or party.
There you go. That's what I'm getting at.
That's one important factor. And note, I did not say we need to elect anyone who has Wyoming roots. Right. We need to elect the right person with Wyoming roots.
All right, fair enough. Okay, so you've done been in a lot of offices, state superintendent, public instruction, in a couple different places. Why Congress? Yep. Why are you running?
Yep. I have a proven track record of first of all, making thoughtful and conservative decisions on SLID board, State Board of Land Commissioners, and all of the other duties as assigned as state superintendent. We made a splash in education, both in Wyoming by improving education through adding career and technical education to our accountability model, adding military readiness to our to our accountability model. I cut the budget, I cut our workforce, made a slew of conservative decisions, and that got a lot of attention at the national level. And I was able to impact lots more students and families. While I spent 2 years working in Governor Younkin's administration overseeing education there, we peeled back the transgender agenda and replaced it with a great document and set of guidelines for schools to follow that really put parents and families in charge. We also turned the tide on student expectations so that we weren't lying to the public anymore. And both of those acts that took place in Virginia and many that took place in Wyoming have permeated across the country. So I've had a lot of experience with national leadership in partisan situations. Growing up in Gillette, I have a great pulse on the energy community, which is going to be front and center for our next Congresswoman. I will need to work closely with business and industry, with state leaders, and with communities across the state to make sure that impact is felt statewide and that it's always positive and beneficial for Wyomingites. And so, not only do I have the experience and the roots to do this job, I also just have the passion and commitment to serve Wyoming at this level and really make sure that I'm Wyoming's representative representing them.
Okay. You use that word conservative. What does that mean?
Well, I like I said, I grew up in Wyoming. I grew up in the 80s in Gillette. Some of my most influential beliefs and values came from the likes of my dad, my church, Ronald Reagan, my community in Gillette, and that has shaped me to ascribe to the Republican platform and also to have a healthy streak of libertarian that I think most of us in Wyoming have. Conservatism at its very face value, and it's something that I carry with me to every single decision, means that we have small, limited government that is closest to the people. In communities, they make the very best decisions about children, families, growth, commerce, etc. It means that we have a strong military that is well-funded. I will always support a well-funded military, a strong and ready America, and I'll always support the assets that we have right here in Wyoming, which are our Air Force Base and our Guard. It also means that we protect life, pre-beginning to end, and I will do that with vehemence, among other things. So I'm limited government. I talked about that, and just social conservatism is super important to me as well.
Okay, I think it's a fair question to ask, and this might be a little bit uncomfortable. But the last time you were in elective office in Wyoming, you're serving as Superintendent of Public Instruction. You resigned to take a job elsewhere. So I think it's fair to ask, why should Wyoming citizens vote for you right now? I mean, given that last time you took a different job.
Yeah, that's a super important question and something that I'm asked in almost every community that I go in.
Sure.
And first of all, if I had something to hide or be less than transparent about, I would have never put my name or my hat in the ring for this office. The truth is that you'll recall in 2022, when Governor Younkin was elected, he took part in a debate with his opponent where his opponent flat out said parents should not have a say in their children's education. That is perhaps what put Governor Younkin over the finish line to become Virginia's governor in a pretty blue state. But I had received a phone call from then Governor-elect Younkin, who said, "We are in dire straits. This is the epicenter of all that's wrong with education in America. You've done a great job in Wyoming. You have stood up against DEI. You have stood up against radical ideology in our classrooms. You've done great work with literacy and career and technical education, and I want you to come and do that in Virginia." It was really an opportunity to impact more students and families. I was there and did that job. It was a tough job in that environment, but Governor Younkin had a strong agenda that impacted millions of people, and I knew that bringing my expertise and leadership to the table would make an impact not just in Virginia but across the nation, which it has. We rolled out some great work. There was a transgender agenda in place in Virginia when I got there. We rolled that back right away and wrote new guidelines that empowered children and families. We saw a system that was lying to parents and families and students about how well they were doing in school. We peeled back the wool, so to speak, over those expectations and told the truth to parents and to the state of Virginia. That's permeated across the nation. Both of those actions have. So I'm proud of the work that I've done as state superintendent, both in Wyoming and Virginia, and it has impacted literally millions of students and families across the nation.
Okay, well, with all due respect, I don't think you addressed my question. My question is, why should we vote for you now?
Oh, well, I see. there are 8 of us in this race, and I am the candidate that brings those roots in Wyoming that we talked about earlier. I am the candidate that has proven conservative state and national leadership, and I look forward to taking that to this office. Look at my record, look at what I bring to the table, and Wyomingites will need to make a decision about who they vote for.
All right, if you could give me 3 things that you're running on, and please be specific here, what would you say that those are?
Yeah, so first and foremost, Wyomingites, just as everyone else across the nation, are really feeling the pinch with our economy, especially in healthcare, energy, and housing. I'm in communities every day, and this is absolutely the story that I hear in every single community. So I really want to do the work alongside Wyomingites and alongside the leaders in our state to drive down the costs of healthcare, remove barriers that keep Wyomingites from having the most important relationship in healthcare, which is between a doctor and the patient. I want to make sure that we have opportunities in Wyoming to unleash energy production and innovation so that every single community benefits from it. And, we have a short-term problem of high gas prices right now, largely because of the war in Iran. But we also have a demand on our energy grid that is pronounced by the technology development and just more demand worldwide and nationwide on our grid. That's a win-win for Wyoming because not only can we put more energy into the system, but we can also see benefits by not having our energy rates go up and up and up. So affordability or the economy is one of the big reasons that one of the big issues that I'm running on. Most of the time in Congress, that looks like blocking and tackling and removing barriers for Wyomingites. But it also is making sure that the Permit and the Speed Act, which help Wyoming businesses and industries conduct commerce more effectively, it's getting that through to the president's desk. It's continuing to repeal and reform efforts and supporting President Trump in his very bold agenda that Wyoming benefits from. I'm an Army mom.
Oh, okay. Go ahead. I interrupted you.
Yep. Number 2, I'm an Army mom, and I strongly support our military. I want to make sure that our military is well funded, that our assets are protected and growing, that our warfare and our military is modern and ready for whatever comes to our nation, so that we can be strong and America first. And that's another reason that I am running. Third, I care deeply and have devoted my life to children and families and communities across Wyoming. I want to continue to do that at this level.
Okay, so you mentioned the electricity rates, those sorts of things. One of the biggest drains on the grid is going to be data centers, and there's a zillion of them proposed in Wyoming right now. What's driving that is largely AI. Should AI be regulated, and if so, how?
It's a great question, David, and I've done a lot of talking with people at the local level about this. And saying we need AI regulated is too big and too simple of an answer. We need to first and foremost make sure that children are safe online. That is going to take an effort at the federal level and at the state, community, and family level to get that accomplished. Right now, I don't have a great degree of confidence that our children are safe online, or that Congress is taking the necessary actions to make sure that children are safe online. The second thing is, in my industry, in my real job, I'm still working in the education field, and it makes sense for local communities, local school districts, and states to work on an AI policy that fits them best and not have too much government interference. There may be some exceptions to that as I'm talking to industry, and I pose the idea of having a state framework for a particular industry. There's some trepidation and some caution around that. because it would make it hard to do business from state to state and across the nation. So I think that kind of going all in and saying that we need or we don't need a federal policy for AI is a simplistic answer. That said, I think it's important to understand the places where federal government framework so that states can create a more specific framework might be appropriate, but generally I am opposed to the federal government doing any kind of regulation on something like this. The federal government never weighed in on cell phones. Had they, we would probably all still be carrying around box phones.
Might be a good thing.
On our shoulder. And I don't want to see federal government weighing into this. I think the people and communities can make much better decisions about what these policies look like.
All right, so you briefly mentioned education. And I want to go back to a question I asked you in 2022 when we did our first interview. And it was simply, why haven't our scores gone up? I mean, from the time you were the superintendent of public instruction until now, our student achievement is pretty much the same, which is mediocre at best. So why haven't our scores gone up?
Yeah, another great question. Of course, I haven't been in the chair of state superintendent for almost 4 years-ish. And so I certainly don't want to speak for the leadership of the Department of Education.
Just give me your opinion. I mean, you've got a lot of experience.
I do have a lot of experience. And the bottom line is that our education system strayed pretty far from what's important for student achievement. For years and years and years, we were focused on priorities at the national level, at the state, and at the local level that distracted teachers from teaching what's most important in our classrooms: reading, writing, math, and ever importantly, civics. I think that tide is turning. We saw this administration, and particularly Secretary McMahon, shift priorities from kind of that DEI perspective that was so evident in the Biden administration to focusing on reading and math and civics and career and technical education and technology in the classroom. That is what we should be focused on, and that is all that we should be focusing on. So watching the work of Secretary McMahon, watching the Department of Education closing and being curtailed from bleeding into those other areas that distract us from what's most important for our kids to learn is all going to help our scores improve. You can't point to one thing that's driven scores down, but I think that that's the most important thing. We've taken our eye off the ball over the course of the last decade or so on what's important to teach kids.
All right, so let's talk energy for a minute.
Yep.
You're applying for a job where you're going to be one of 435 people, and which means your influence is probably going to be pretty low. But if for a state like Wyoming, we produce more energy almost than any other state. And yet, every time I drive to Casper, all I see is flashing red lights and windmills, and it really irritates me, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
As a member of Congress, if you're successful, what are you going to do specifically? I mean, what would be your game plan? For step 1, step 2, step 3 to help out Wyoming's energy sector.
Yeah. Let me just push back on one thing that you said at the top of the question, and that is that you don't have much influence because there's only one of you in.
One of 435.
Yeah, I actually think that Wyoming's has always punched above their weight in this office. Number one, and by the way, we've been putting a woman into this office since 1994, and we haven't been afraid to kick a woman out of this office when they're not doing their job. And this office is up for re-election every 2 years. So that's super important. But one of 435 actually gives Wyoming the opportunity to have an outsized voice, because I don't have 17 other colleagues in Congress that cross aisles, etc. I get to work directly on behalf of Wyoming people. We saw Harriet Hageman rise to have the gavel of the water subcommittee within 2 years.
Okay, fair point.
And if you look back at Wyoming's history, especially with women and conservative women in Congress, typically rise to be able to represent their states and their congressional districts in leadership position much faster than men do, and Wyoming is no exception to that. So, number one in energy when I get in is I will continue the great work that Congresswoman Harriet Hageman has done on behalf of Wyoming people to reform, repeal, and work with President Trump on the agenda that we saw play out in the One Big Beautiful Bill that was signed last July 4th that really did unleash a lot of barriers, or removed a lot of barriers to Wyoming doing energy business. I'll continue to do that. The Speed and the Permit Act are two examples. Those have made it through the House, and I will be a strong advocate who did not sponsor that bill in the House because I'm brand new, and I'll be a new advocate to get that through the Senate alongside our senators from Wyoming and many other colleagues who support that. Yep. Number two, I'll work closely with industry in Wyoming as well as the energy industry writ large, as well as Wyoming leaders in our legislature and in the state elected positions to make sure that we are, number one, creating or developing or producing more energy, and number two, taking advantage of all of these innovative businessmen and women in our state who surround our anchor business of energy, and really make sure that we're maximizing that. Number three, we need to take a really close look, not just in the curiosity phase of nuclear energy. We are ready to boom safely with nuclear energy, and we need to do so. We have lots of people who are mobilized to do that work, and federal government should not be an impediment to the development that we want to do with nuclear energy.
All right. Well, we're pretty much out of time, but I do have one more quick question. There seems to be 11, 10, 27 other people in the House of Representatives race. If you could just give me your 1 or 2 minute quick the reasons why you should vote for Jillian Balow.
Yeah, look, the other candidates that are on the Republican ticket, we're all going to be talking about the same thing, right? We are all going to be the reliable red vote for the big ticket Republican issues. I'm no exception. I will also be a strong voice for that as well. But what sets me apart is again, my conservative values: limited government, strong military, end wasteful spending, never say yes to higher taxes or new taxes. But most importantly is doing the work on behalf of Wyoming people. I will be the congresswoman that works in D.C., lives and operates and has Wyoming on my mind 24/7. I will be the constituents candidate working for Wyoming every day and on every level.
All right. Well, I appreciate it, Jillian. Thanks for being a good sport. If people want to get a hold of you, how do they do that?
My website is www.JillianBalow, no R, it is not Barlow, Jillian Balow, Balow, for Wyoming.com. And that's my website. You can find me on social media, especially on Facebook. And I am in your communities every single day. So watch for those meet and greets and those opportunities that the party and other entities are giving to candidates to make sure that folks know who they're voting for. That's super important. And one of the perks of being a Wyomingite, we get to meet who we vote for. All
right. Well, I appreciate it, Jillian. If you're up in Sheridan, hit me up and you can come sit in the studio and we'll continue the conversation. So there you have it, my friends. Yet another person running for the U.S. House of Representatives. Well, that'll about do it for today's installment of the broadcast. Have a great and safe Memorial Day weekend. And while you're at it, take some time to remember those people that gave their lives for this incredible country that we all get to live in. We won't have an installment of the podcast on Monday. I'm going to be taking a well-deserved day off. But we'll pick up Cowboy State Politics live on Tuesday, and then, of course, we'll have another podcast on Wednesday. But for now, my friends, from the base of the Bighorns at the Cowboy State Politics studio, I'm David Iverson, and this is the one and only Cowboy State Politics.